So next up, guys, we have one of the most key topics that we should be talking about right now, because the impact of COVID is not over yet. It has impacted the way we work, the future of work, and the way we will actually proceed to work. I would like to call on stage Steve Cadigan and Noni Allwood. Hi, Noni. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
How early in the morning is it for you? Your PT, I would imagine.
Not too bad. It's about 7:30 in the morning in San Francisco.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. I'm guessing Steve is still joining us on stage. Can I ask you, in regards to your initial thoughts around the future of work, what has this disruption, meant for it?
Steve, this is a very interesting question, because I think that we're in a moment of huge changes, not only brought by COVID, but now added with this overdue realization that we have to deal with racism in the United States and everywhere else, systematic racism. I think we have a chance to make this difference, to make a difference and really shift things, or we can stay or we can opt to and imagine that we can go back to the old normal, which is not going to happen. So right now we're facing the truth that the past is not going to be the same again. Hi, Steve. Cadigan.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. I just realized we've had three Steves right now back to back. We had Steve Swanson, myself, Steve George, and you, Steve Cadigan.
Yep, it's a very common name. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
It's a very nice name. It's a very, very nice name. Steve, I'll let you take on the stage, because I know you have an amazing set of thoughts to share. So I will let you
Thanks,
take
Steve.
on the stage.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, everyone, for joining us, which for us in California, for Noni and I, it's the morning. I know for many of you, it's the evening, or maybe it's really early morning. And we want to dive in, as Steve said, to a topic that Noni and I have great passion for, around the future of work and how COVID-19 may be presenting opportunities for us to solve problems differently, to tackle maybe problems with our culture, problems with dimensions in our workforce that we struggled with before. We've got this new opportunity right now to really approach things differently. And so we want to dive into those. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Steve Cadigan. I've been working in the talent field for about 30 years, largely in human resource roles in major organizations, also in some smaller pre-IPO companies. I was with LinkedIn for a number of years. In the last 7 years, I've dedicated my time to trying to understand how I can help people and companies develop compelling talent strategies. And earlier in my career, I had a great opportunity to work alongside Noni at Cisco Systems, where we were on a task force charged with trying to integrate the hundreds of companies that Cisco was buying prior to the dot-com bubble bursting. So Noni, welcome. Tell the audience a little bit about your background.
Thank you, Steve. Well, unlike Steve, I have a different trajectory, which is I'm an engineer by training. I did software development, and then I went to work for Cisco in sales operations, where I had the chance to work on mergers and acquisitions. And what I find is that I didn't enjoy the culture. The more I would rise in the organization, the lonelier I felt. So I decided that I was going to try to change the culture and open it up for more emerging strands of talent that were coming up. So I took the role of global diversity and inclusion leader for Cisco. After I left Cisco for the last 10 years, I've led research, and I have my consulting practice into trying to innovate in the space of inclusion, because clearly the work that we've done to date has not paid off, because otherwise we would be done by now. So that's what I do.
All right. Oh, Noni, awesome. And, I think it's really fitting that they put us right after the rocket scientists, space astronauts, which arguably many people believe like that is one of the most complex undertakings you could try to achieve, is getting into space. I would argue with our specific bias that navigating an enormous diverse workforce to try to achieve something together, to try to build harmony, to try to build connectedness, maybe is equally complex, and we underestimate sometimes how complicated that can be. So I was sitting listening to the people on stage before us, and yeah, space travel really, really hard, but so is trying to get people all aligned. And the first thing I want to ask you, Noni, is what's the biggest thing that you've noticed is different today relative to COVID-19. And we also have the George Floyd element, which has just taken over the narrative, particularly where we live in the United States right now. What do you notice is happening right now? What's caught your attention the most when you think about the future of work and what's happening in the environment?
You know, Steve, that's a really good question, because as Americans, the culture is we don't like discomfort. And we're in the heart of one of the most uncomfortable phases that we can be in, which is uncertainty. We have no idea what the new normal is going to be exactly after COVID. And here we are with this very huge, complicated social problem that we've been postponing and postponing and postponing. And here we are at a moment of truth where we have a chance to do something, but it's not comfortable, it's not easy, and it's not quick. So just like COVID, which we're now almost trying to pretend that it's gone, you know, and you see the numbers rising in the US. It's a reminder that we have to go back and really do the work so that the problem is solved. And this is no different for whether it's COVID or the social issues. You've got to make a commitment and you got to stick with it. And so this is the offer that the moment is giving us, and let's see if we take it.
No, absolutely. I work with, just like you, Noni, I work with big organizations that really are struggling to try to change their culture. And now in the blink of an eye, we went from normal to completely abnormal. We're all working in a different way. I wonder if this is an opportunity, like, some people, and you and I have talked about this, it's sort of like a moment of truth right now.
It is.
You have a chance to rebuild your organization differently. And I guess, maybe develop different patterns and different behaviors. Are you seeing, relative to, having tough conversations about racial difference or gender difference, are you seeing, for our audience, any organizations or any ways people are dealing with it effectively that we can maybe help other organizations learn how to do it?
Yeah, it's really interesting, because what it boils down to is the basics. So let me tell you a story of one company, actually two companies, two major corporations. They have invested millions of dollars on diversity for the last 20, 25 years. They have a great reputation, listed on the top companies for diverse employees, a really well-standing company. And they realized when they looked at their numbers, they hadn't changed representation, they hadn't changed engagement numbers. So they went back to basics. But here's the difference. The CEO took it upon himself to really own the problem and hold his leaders accountable. He himself decided to learn what was going on and get exposure to the experience of the employees. And you have to have some humility when you have to hear that the company's experience is not the same for everyone, that your leadership perhaps is not even resonating the same to everybody, and that the way that employees are navigating their careers is so radically different. But it's only when the CEO had a chance to sit down, talk to the employees, engender trust, do some priorities in partnership with the employees, that things started going, and holding him and his executive team accountable for the outcomes. It really boils down to the basics of leadership, right? Accountability, courage, determination, and tenacity, and accountability. It's the same things. But in diversity, unfortunately, we have chosen, sometimes we've taken it as a parallel track. There's something that's just going on the side. And when that happens, it is almost like the stepchild of many other functions, and because it's seen like, I have to do human resources, and I have to do diversity. So it's only when they come together that it works.
Right. Like you say, like something that should be so simple is actually really, really complicated. I took down some notes listening to the astronaut Steve Swanson talk. Steve said, when he was asked by Chris, what's it like working in a team? He go, as humans, we are not geared to criticism. And I think this is one of the challenges I think that we face coaching the leaders and teams that we work with, is that having hard conversations is hard. But that, I think, is more important, is trying to have those conversations than not having the conversations. And what I'm hoping for, and our audience, I hope you'll share this with Noni and I, is that this opportunity for us to be working different, for us to build cultures, is maybe we can get away from the normal response to a big issue of racial difference, for example, such as, what's the normal reaction, the normal playbook, Noni, for CEOs or organizations when there's a big issue on race? Okay, we're going to have a town hall. We're going to talk about it. We're going to have our Black employees come and share their experience with the audience. We're going to give money to charities that are helping out with race relations. And then everyone sort of feels good and they go back and they start doing everything the same. What's your thinking? Do you think we have an opportunity here now to sort of tackle this differently?
Absolutely. And here's the thing. It starts with courage. You have to be willing to say, I have to face this ugly thing and it's not going to be comfortable. And also you have to be able to tell your peers with whom you get along famously well, you're going to have to confront their own biases, their own attitudes towards this issue, because it doesn't mean that everybody in your executive team is on board with you. So you stand as a leader of an organization, a chance to alienate some of the leaders that may not come along with you. But if you have your courage, your leadership courage in place, you will go ahead and do that. Secondly, is I think that there's this urgent need to educate the executives in the United States. And oh, by the way, Steve, I would just want to make a parenthesis here. Every society segregates itself. In the United States, it happens to be race. But this is a conversation that is global in nature, because in many countries it's money. In other countries it's name or family heritage. In other countries it's religion. My point is societies always do this. So what is happening in the United States, it's not happening exactly the same in other countries, but it is happening in different circumstances. So, but the second thing is, I think leaders need to engage their employees. They have to start with trust. If they don't build trust, this is going to be a very long road, which is management sending programs or creating initiatives. The employees going, what was that about? Build an alliance, work together, educate yourselves. And then thirdly is just be ready. This is a long-term process, and you have to have markers and milestones that will tell you that you're moving in the right direction. But this is not a one-year gig. This is not even, I would not say it's a one-year gig. I don't even think it's a 5-year gig, but you're making progress, and that makes a big difference.
So true. And now we have to try to build trust, try to build cohesion, and tackle some hard subjects when we're all not together. We're all alone together. And I don't know about your home, but my home is now a school. It is a business, and it is also a home. And so I have more distraction. I have more challenges and differences. Hey, Dad, can you make us breakfast? I've got to fight with my kids for Wi-Fi bandwidth while they're doing homeschooling or webinars or playing video games. But what are your thoughts? What ideas do you have? And I kind of want to roll around in this with you, because I've given this so much thought. How can we suggest for leaders and companies to build that trust when things are so weird right now, when things are so different? How can we come out maybe stronger when we're not together, and build a new normal where the fabric was even better? What are your thoughts on? And I know we're still in the early stages. No one knows the answer to that. But what are some suggestions, maybe, or some ideas that we could give to the audience around operating in a way that is better, or maybe breaks barriers and gets us to talk about hard stuff?
This is really interesting. I have to tell you, though, for me, one of the biggest things that is this COVID thing, and this is as a human, is the fact that we have to renegotiate our social protocols with each other one by one. When I see you, Steve, rather than my typical, hey, Steve, how are you? I have to say, Steve, can I hug you? Or can I even see you? Would you be comfortable having a cup of coffee? You may say no. And when I see you, I have to redetermine that. That is very complicated in our lives, and think about that in the workplace. Also, companies have relied on physical things, on material things to convey their culture. For example, facilities send us a huge message around culture. Swag, all the stuff, all the clothes. And there's been a big reliance on the pinball machine in the break room, the snacks they offered, if they did that, the size of the office, the size of the cubicle, if that was the case, the color. Anyway, the point is that now we have to throw away all those things, because you'll have to convey culture in the things you do. And also what this is calling for is perhaps not is to build unity and build culture, not in a big setting, but you go team by team. You have to go start with smaller groups, as opposed to trying to, make everybody happy. It puts a lot of responsibility on the manager, Steve, which we have not seen, because the manager has not been necessarily the ambassador of culture, and now they will be, because that's what they're
right. That's right. So I was speaking with a colleague of mine from LinkedIn yesterday, and I was sharing with him, hey, I'm working on this book on the future of work, and what are you seeing? And he said, Steve, something amazing. I have a head of engineering in my organization who's of Pakistani origin, and he, for his whole career, has been around, you need to be in your chair, you need to be doing your job, and he was he was a task-oriented leader. And my friend, who's his HR executive, was worried this leader was going to have a really hard time pivoting because he can't see if someone's in their seat. He can't visibly check on people's work the same way. And what he said, which was really surprising, is that this leader pivoted almost instantly. It was almost like the forced new reality led him to have to say, I need to rebuild my leadership style, how I communicate, how I manage. And it was a beautiful, shocking thing. And there's more and more stories like this that I hope that we hear. Some of the things that I'm encouraging organizations to do is, if you get together as a company once a month, maybe you should get together once a week. If you have a weekly one-on-one with your key members of your team, maybe that needs to be every other week. I think we need to double down. And we also have to start with, are you okay? Is your family safe? Are you worried about your parents? Is there anything the company can do for you to support your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for example? You know,
that's a very good point, because a lot has changed even without us knowing. For example, the fusion of work and life. You know, children, the cat crawling on top of your laptop, or your children coming to sit with you when you're in a conference call. Your setting. You know, I would have not shown a lot of this stuff that sometimes people are doing conference calls in their bedroom or wherever they can. So those lines have blurred a lot during this crisis, and I don't think you can put them back. The other thing is that we have to be aware is that not everybody has suffered the impact of this, and we stand a chance, especially with women in the workplace, to leave them behind, because the crisis has shown how much of the burden of childcare and school care, if it's needed, the women carry. And this is, almost on the verge of, by 2030, there's research indicating that women will be over half of the main breadwinners in the United States in the household, meaning not only they'll have to deal with household, they have to deal with children, but now they're going to be the breadwinners. Their income is going to be the largest income. And we're putting incredible weight on women's shoulders. So companies, part of their inclusion, this is why inclusion matters even more now, for the things you're saying, how we engage employees, but also to be able to anticipate these kinds of things and take measures to make sure that we don't lose talent along the way for wrong reasons.
Right, which would suggest, Noni, for all the business leaders listening to this, that if you are ahead of the game and you build jobs and opportunities for working moms that accommodate the reality of their challenges, you may have access to some incredibly talented women who also have, loyalty to their families as much as they do to their professional careers. And I think that's an opportunity here for what we were talking about earlier, which is, let's rebuild a new normal and design organizations so it's not about head count, or it's more about the quality of the talent and the opportunities. And I think that's a really powerful message that I hope our audience is going to recognize and listen to, because we are going, how long are we going to be in this situation? Probably longer than we all want to realize. I mean, what we're seeing right now in the United States and other countries that I'm reading about is that the cases of COVID are continuing to climb as they were 3 months ago, and yet restrictions are falling, and people are congregating more frequently because we're impatient. We're tired of it. And we're willing, I think, the will of the people is we're willing to take the risk of this virus, because the opposite of staying sheltered is becoming less and less feasible.
Yeah. This is a very good point. Steve, I want to follow up on a thing on something you said earlier. I think that what you're watching in the world is that there's a new model of leadership emerging, which is not the traditional patriarchal hierarchical model of leadership. And let me just tell you just a quick story that COVID-19 brought up. There's 18 women who lead countries in this world. 8 of them had amazing success dealing with the virus. And there's Scandinavian countries, there's also Australia, Taiwan, New Zealand, Taiwan, and the island of St. Martin's, if you can believe that, in the Caribbean. So these women but what did they do that was so special? They had courage. This is a new important attribute of leadership that has to be, brought to the top of the hierarchy of what leaders need to be able to have. Courage. They called the crisis when nobody believed them. They were not afraid of losing political standing. Number two is they had humility, just to say, I don't know the answers. Let me bring the experts. Angela Merkel, she's a nuclear chemist. She brought scientists to deal with, to make the decisions. And then finally, they had empathy. They were able to show, whether it's the Prime Minister of Denmark washing dishes while she was making her conference calls, or whatever it was, they were able to bring empathy to the whole thing, emerging out of a crisis, not only with a resolved issue of controllable cases, but also with 80% of trust in their countries. So
that's just phenomenal.
It's a new model that needs empathy, compassion. Feelings are okay, emotions. And the more important thing is, how do we give everybody, especially men, permission to bring these attributes to work when in the past it's been considered signs of weakness? So it's
right. And I have a couple of examples that I can share to support what you're saying, Noni. A few executives that I work with who are really, buttoned up, and they think, work is work and home is home. And now they're having to be on a Zoom call with their team, while their team is watching them negotiate with their spouse for space in the kitchen to have a conference call with the team, which is a very humanizing experience. Mm-hmm. And what this one executive I was speaking with said, which surprised him, didn't surprise me at all. He said, wow, I thought I was coming across weak to my team because they were seeing me have to, navigate a discussion in my home. And they actually respect me more because they see me more as a human. And maybe that is one of the silver linings, that we're getting. Everyone on the planet is going through a massive change in almost every dimension of their life right now. Okay. At the same time, we've never had this on Earth before. And so here we are, and we're all realizing in each other's homes, like one of my friends said, and I thought it was really funny. He says, what has COVID really done for us? It's allowed us to see home decor of our coworkers like never before. Like, I see more like, you've got some tasteful art behind you. I've got a messy, sloppy, room over here. And so that's just interesting. I have a window into you, someone who I care about and I work with a lot, that I didn't have necessarily before. Yeah. And hopefully that can parlay to better trust, as we're talking about, is to, and the more you trust, the more you feel comfortable talking about hard stuff, right?
Yeah, and the thing is that try also making sure that companies realize that there might be employees that feel miserably embarrassed about showing their homes, because if we're seeing a home that has the comparisons, so it's important that managers also navigate those things, because not everybody has the same setup at home, and not everybody has the same situation, not everybody has the same light and sound and whatever, and so to make sure that people know how to be comfortable even in their own home while they're working, it's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah. And that notion of checking in with people. So let's summarize, Noni, some of the big points here that we really want to land with the audience. New normal, new opportunity for a new leadership model. And as I've heard from you, the key dimensions of that are, greater courageousness, to, be less fearful of having some of those harder conversations. And people are expecting now, I think, changes. They're expecting us to tackle things differently, right? What are some other advice that we can give the audience around the new normal?
Inclusion matters now more than ever. So I know sometimes it's tempting to say, well, we have to cut expenses. Let's just cut the diversity budget. It's okay if you cut a diversity budget. It's as long as you embed it into everything else you do, as you infuse it into everything else you do. But this is not the time to stop paying attention to inclusion. That's my point. You can do many things, but inclusion is even more essential now. And so let's not drop the ball and let's not lose focus, because we have to stick with it.
Right. And I guess the last point I would say is my desire and my hope is, as we move forward, is that diversity is not a thing. It's not a program. It's not the thing that the diversity leader owns. It's the essence of who we have to be if we're going to optimize greatness in any organization. And I think the sooner that becomes just part of the DNA of every organization, not something nice we have to check the box so we look like we're compliant with our, unconscious bias training or sexual harassment training, awareness training. It's something more integral to really who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like customer satisfaction, like cost control, like quality, like all those things that are embedded. They're infused into everything a company does.
Right. So Noni, I want to thank you for joining us early, our California time. It's just an honor and a pleasure to always work with you and debate around this stuff. And I hope, and just want you to know, you can hug me when I see you. Okay. I'm okay with that.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Steve, back to you.
Thank you so much, Noni and Steve. I do appreciate the conversation you created. In fact, that's exactly what everyone was talking about.